What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Welcome back to another episode of 10-Year Town. I got nothing to promote this week, so I just wanted to say I hope you guys are doing great. Thank you so much for listening. I love doing this. I hope you guys are enjoying listening and learning a lot, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thanks. Today's guest is Oklahoma's very own Corey Kent. Corey is an artist and a songwriter, and you know him from his platinum single Wild as Her, as well as his extensive catalog of fantastic songs. In this episode, we talk about his journey through Nashville, from working at a pavement company all the way up to having the #1 country song in the country. I know you guys are going to love this episode, so I'll get to it. Without further ado, here he is, Corey Kent.
InEars are so isolating that you're not listening to the rest of the band, you're listening to yourself. And then I'd like play differently if I have like floor wedges, because I'm listening to everything.
Dude, I went no InEars this year.
You liking it?
Yeah, it's not if you're playing bigger rooms, it becomes unsustainable. It just gets too loud.
Yeah.
But for like, we've just been doing clubs. Yeah. And it's like, I love it. Cause I mean, you probably started out the same way, like with some crazy wedge.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mix. And then you switch to InEars and you kind of like lose the, I don't know. I feel like I was losing something.
I hate InEars.
Yeah.
I hate them.
Do you have, how many, like crowd mics do you?
Just one on each side of the stage.
Yeah, same. That's what we had.
I started like reinforcing though. Like we used to have, like 2 monitors, 2 floor wedges, just so, cause I just end up yanking an ear out, which is probably worse than, I think it's supposed to be even worse than just using floor wedges. So I don't know, man, but I just can't not hear the environment. If I can't, there are moments where like we're playing and they're screaming the song at us and I'm like, I don't know if they're that into it. And I'm like, they're like, dude, this is like the loudest crowd you've played for the last 20 nights. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, it's because of these things in my ear. So we have some crowd mics, but I don't know, man. Maybe I just don't have it dialed in right. I'm not a tech guy. Like I don't probably have the right lingo to get what I really need out of it. And so I just yank an ear out. I'm going to be deaf in like in 20 years, no doubt.
Yeah.
But
I can tell that is another thing with the going from ears back to wedges is like, I'm sitting in the hotel room and I'm like, my ears are ringing pretty bad. Like this isn't good. Yeah. I'm sacrificing my body for rock and roll right now.
Hell yeah. I made peace with it, dude. Whatever. Yeah. My grandpa's freaking deaf in one ear from the lumber mill, and
really,
it's annoying, but it's actually funny, you know? Yeah. You're talking to him and he's just, what? That's going to be me for sure.
Yep. But, it's all good, man.
I have some stories to tell, but I won't be able to hear yours, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for being here. You hear everything okay?
Yeah, it's awesome. All good, man.
Well, I always start this thing off with the same question, which is, and I know that your answer to this question is going to be a little different, but I always start this thing off with the same question, which is, how long have you been in town?
Okay, so yeah, complicated answer because I live in Texas now.
Yeah.
But I first moved to Nashville late 2011, early 2012, somewhere right in there.
Okay.
And spent about a year and a half here, and did the whole sleep in your truck, crash on buddies' couches. Yeah. Don't have an address, but you live here, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I went back to school, came back. On and off, I was here from 2011, 2012 to late 2018. And then 2019, I moved to Texas. So
gotcha.
But there was a stint in there such a just a horrible answer to your question, but it's a very
answer.
Complicated answer. I've lived here 3 times between the span of 2012 and 2018.
Gotcha.
Most of that time was here, but I did go back to Oklahoma State for a couple years and then moved back out here, went back to Texas to try to get my wife to fall in love with me. This girl at the time that I met at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Somehow did that. And then we moved back here.
Gotcha.
And then we wrote for a couple years here and ended up permanently in Texas.
Yeah.
Or so we think. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
And
you're from, where in Oklahoma are you from?
I'm from Bixby, Oklahoma, which is, it's basically, Tulsa's almost eaten that town by this point. It used to be its own thing, and now it kind of feels like you don't really know where Tulsa ends and Bixby begins.
Dude, I really like Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa's a great town.
Tulsa is one of my favorite places to play. Like, it kind of reminds me, I don't actually know, of what Nashville like used to feel like from like, it's like,
I can see that.
It's kind of a small town, sort of, but it's like got a great art scene, and I feel like they really support,
they do
music.
Now.
Yeah.
And you got such a variety of music coming out of there. Like you got, like Ben Rector was a big dude coming out of there when I was growing up in that scene, and went on to do some really cool stuff. Now you got Will Dorado, which is a really cool rock band that they're Tulsa based. Like all 3 of the guys live there. They're out with like Dawes and Kings of Leon. It's in that realm of rock. And we're just talking about all the cool stuff coming out of that scene right now. I mean, obviously Zach Bryan being out of that area, J.R. Carroll, you got John Moreland, it's his own unique beast, and it's a really cool town. But it wasn't that way when I was living there, when I was growing up there. The art scene felt pretty dead, but it's had a really cool resurgence recently.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And the downtown area is so sick now.
Yeah, it really is becoming like I never viewed it as like a spot that had like great variety of food and like vibes downtown. It was like office buildings only. And now you go and there's cool spots that you can eat on a rooftop overlooking a baseball park. Like that was not the vibe when I was growing up there. But I love going back to visit now, and I love seeing the town thrive.
Yeah. So. It's awesome, man. Well, I think I was thinking about this driving over here. Like the whole purpose of this podcast, In Your Town, is to sort of like get everybody's story is different. Everybody's journey is a path, and it's easy to look back and it seems like it all made sense in a straight line, but of course it doesn't. And yours is so interesting because to me, like, you moved here and then you actually moved to Texas, like I think what you said, 2019.
Yeah.
And then sort of had this like breakout moment in, what was it? Was it 22 or 20? Yeah. Now it's all running together.
22. Well, we released the song, it kind of broke it wide open for us in 22.
Yeah.
And it's had a long life. So 22, 23 all kind of runs together for me too.
Yeah. But kind of go back to when you first moved here, like what was the did you always like want to be in Nashville? I'm sure you were at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So were you heavy into like the kind of Texas country red dirt stuff as well? And
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't not be in that scene. Like that is the scene. That is the scene that you play, especially like we were talking about before. Tulsa kind of had this resurgence, and there's a variety of music coming out now of that scene. But it was really just that. Like it was the records that I was, that I were just seared into my mind was like, I think it was a 2005 Live at Billy Bob's record from Randy Rogers, and all those guys that kind of were just the Texas red dirt legends, right? Like the guys that to this day are still playing that circuit and crushing. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's almost inescapable. Like if you're a country musician growing up in that area, like you have to be a part of that in some way.
Yeah.
And I loved it. But I also loved the crafting of like a truly great song. And I was seeing that happen a lot in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You know, and like my favorite, the artist writer that resonated with me so much, high school, college, was Eric Church.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I'm not hearing the same. I'm not hearing the same thing over and over again. This is a truly unique, well-crafted, world-class. It's a piece of art at this point, right? Like just lyrically, and I loved it. And so while I love the roots and the authenticity and the grit and really like the rock and roll nature of the Red Dirt scene, but also loved the really well written, crafted song.
Yeah.
And so I was just over the years have done my best to keep both of those things in my music.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I have this funny thing where I said it one time, and the more I think about it, the more it rings true. But I said, rock and roll ain't dead. It just moved to Texas. I mean, if you really think about, there really isn't a bunch of outlets for rock and roll music. And it seems to kind of just have adapted. And I see like country music growing on a global scale now. And I'm like, I think that we are kind of a landing pad for rock and roll too. So you're hearing, you know, a Southern rock and you're hearing that influence more and more in country music.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the country music tent is like, it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. And it's really cool because there is so many different influences now, like that are in the country space. Yeah.
And more lanes. Like that's what gets me so excited is that, you know, I mean, especially during my time in Nashville, I just felt I was doing the same thing I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I remember I had a booking agent that was just like, I don't know what to do with you. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're not this, but you're also like, where do you fit?
Yeah.
Where do you fit in? And you're a kid from Oklahoma that grew up on all that stuff, and you can clearly hear it in your music, but it's also clear that you're writing a different style song and it doesn't really fit in here on the radio. So what I'm excited about is now I've been doing the same thing for so long, and it just so happens that there's a lane in country music for the mainstream fan that they dig this, you know? And, but it also makes it a little more rewarding to me because we didn't have to chase something or change anything. It was just like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we've been doing. This is what we're going to keep doing. And
it's awesome.
It makes it easier. It makes it less of a feeling of having to keep up with it, you know?
Yeah. It's like the market kind of came around to you in a way.
Yeah.
And what you were doing. And I think like you referenced Eric Church, like that's sort of like, you know, what he was doing his thing. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, it was like really like his third record before it like really broke wide open for him. Which I think I know I'm inspired by his story for sure.
Yeah. And isn't that a tough thing to like know? Of course we look back at that and we're like, oh, he should have been like totally confident in those first two records. They're great.
Yeah.
And knowing that Chief was coming, like, why? But in that moment, I'm sure he was going like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why? I think I'm making great stuff. Why is this not connecting on the level that I think it should?
Yeah.
And it's like a constant mental battle, right? As an artist of like trying to take an honest assessment of where you're at and do I need to change things or do I need to be patient? Like, that's a tough mental battle.
What did that kind of look like for you on your journey? Like you were here and then up until I guess you moved back to Texas, were you writing a bunch? Were you touring? Like what did that kind of look like?
I wasn't touring. When I moved to Tennessee, and really, you know, when I got my publishing deal, it was after kind of hitting pause on an artist career a little bit. It's like I'd been offered a record deal at a great record label, but it just wasn't quite right. Like my vision for it was like Eagles-ish. And I think everyone, and they're very successful people that like their opinions are very valid, but they had a different opinion on what the music should be. And it was more radio friendly, kind of more in that like Rascal Flatts lane.
Gotcha.
And I was like, and that stuff's great. I mean, I grew up listening to that stuff, but that's not in my wheelhouse. That's not like what I do well or where I think my strong suit is. So I kind of respectfully said, that's not the deal for me. And then I ended up with this publishing deal, and I kind of said, I'm going to focus on being a great songwriter and writing songs for other people.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is like I never got a Nashville cut like by any artist, but I was getting Texas cuts, and they were working down there. Like I would go see William Clark Green play a sold out show, and they're screaming the song that we wrote, and it's a #1 in Texas. And I was like, well, shoot, it's kind of obvious that what I'm writing is not working here, but it is working there. Yeah. And I thought I would have more fulfillment writing songs for other people than I did. Yeah. And seeing those things come to life. And I remember I had written a song with Brandon Jenkins, who's like a Red Dirt Texas legend. And I just remember going like, as cool as that is, I want to be the guy singing it. Yeah. And so my time here was spent writing for other people, and it just didn't quite do it for me. And when I moved to Texas, it was because I got cut, I got dropped, got fired. Yeah. I'd never been fired from anything in my life, but I got fired from writing songs for other people. And I don't know, man, it was just like a moment in my life where it's very clear that like the season was changing. Yeah. And so I went, okay, the two things that I was in Nashville for was to be surrounded by great songwriters and really learn how to craft a great song. And I think in my years here, I learned how to do that. Yeah. And then two, the other thing that I was in town for was because I had a publishing deal. Yeah. And then when that went away, I was like, okay, I feel like maybe this chapter of my life's closed. I'm going to go build this on the road in Texas. Like it's the one variable that I can control is the live show, is playing on the road. And I didn't have an agent or nothing, but we knew it was going to be hard, but that was what we committed to do. And like right kind of as I got to Texas is when the whole world shut down for a couple of years. So there was no touring. I moved there and I was like, oh, this is not good. Cause I think my wife and I had, we were about to like welcome our second kid into the world. Yeah. And it's like, this is not a good time to not be able to hustle, Right. But, the world started opening up a little bit. We started playing some shows. I had to work at a pavement company. Yeah. Leading up, all throughout COVID, it was like unemployment or pavement company. And I needed work and they had work. And so that's what I did. And during that time is when I started recording the Blacktop record. And Wild as Her was one of those first few songs that I started recording while I was still working at the pavement company. Wow. And it just opened so many doors for us. We put that song out and I just remember my manager going, hey, you're having a moment. And I was like, what does that mean? It's like, this song is like, this is exploding. It's streaming like crazy. People are using it in videos on all the apps and it's just like, it's a thing. Yeah. And that's kind of how
were you like
the transition from Nashville to Texas
were you like still working?
Yeah.
Like, and this song is like blowing up on the internet and you were touring quite a bit, right?
Yeah. So
kind of at that point
in 2021 was when we really got to, Texas kind of opened up before the rest of the world. Yeah. And so I remember, I think it was January or February, we got to play our first show of the year, and it was the only one in that month. And it was us opening for Flatland Cavalry at Hurricane Harry's in College Station. Yeah. And I remember just only having one show on the whole calendar for the whole year and being like, this is going to be a long year.
Yeah.
Then month 2 rolled around and it was like, okay, here's 2 shows. And month 3 is like, okay, here's 7 shows. But we didn't have an agent or anything. So it was all just, we were just hustling in house. By the end of the year, we played 110 shows with no agent. And most of them, we lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because, you still got to pay the boys.
Relatable,
even
dude.
when you're not getting paid,
Yeah.
But we saw it as an investment. And I just believe that like if we put out good music consistently and that we played the right shows, opened for the right crowds, Randy Rogers gave us a lot of opportunities. Parker McCollum gave us a lot of opportunities. Colby Cooper, Josh Abbott, all those guys they believed that we had what it would take, but it just hadn't been realized yet. And we hadn't had the song that really busted things wide open. And, but yeah, it was kind of a crazy season of like hopeless romantic faith that it could possibly work.
Yeah. You just had a dream.
But yeah. And still working, the pavement company job as long as I could until the touring schedule outweighed the paving schedule.
Yeah.
And then it became obvious. And what was really cool about that was all the people at Tissio Paving in Dallas were like always, they were like, we knew there would come a time where this wouldn't make sense for you anymore. And so when that time came, I walked into the boss's office and was like, knock on the door and he goes, "It's that time, isn't it?" I was like, "It's that time, man. I'm going to launch back out and give this thing everything we got." And thankfully it turned out pretty good.
Man, how cool is that?
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, I love underdog stories. I love, just like resilient, triumphant, you got to overcome obstacle stories. I just never wanted to live one, but but here we are, man. I do love those stories and being on the other side of that is awesome. Yeah. But it's like, also I feel like in a lot of ways we're still a dark horse and there's still a lot of obstacles in front of us and we got a chip on our shoulder and we got a lot of people to prove wrong. Yeah. And we got a lot of fans behind us to prove right.
That's awesome. So
yeah, it's going to be an exciting year in my career. I just feel like there's a lot of new motivation.
Yeah. Well, and I just love your story and like you talk about the resilience of it, but like, it would have been easy to just sort of go, okay, this thing in Nashville didn't work out. I've got this job. I got a family. Like I'm going to do this. But I'm sure it took a lot of almost like suspended disbelief to like continue to like make records and put them out and like, tour without an agent, like all that stuff. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And, but you're doing it.
Hopefully it's inspiring to somebody that's like, I don't know what to do next. Like just do something.
Yeah.
Like that was it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing something, It was just like, whatever opportunity comes my way, we're going to find a way to make it work. And whatever obstacle life throws at us, we're going to find a way to handle it. Like, but that doesn't mean that there weren't times where I was just like, I'm pretty sure music is dead in the water. I mean, it doesn't. Yeah. And I know that we all walked through that, but I can't remember a time in my life where I was more like, even if I wanted to, I couldn't, right? Like there's no opportunity anywhere. Yeah. But just, being patient and I think the biggest thing for me was like getting my priorities straight. I think that's what that time off where it felt like a caution lap. Like everybody that was in the NASCAR race, all the big dogs in country music, they all had to take a caution lap. Nobody could go play. Nobody could hustle. And I just remember being able to, moving to Texas was a big part of it, of just like, I knew I was so busy chasing the dream here that I wasn't focused on the things in my life that really mattered, my wife, my kids, and being grateful, like sitting in gratitude for the things that I had. I was overly worried about what I didn't have or what somebody else had. And that's not a fun place to be, but it was just unhealthy. And then being in Texas kind of felt like a reset, and being in that moment where nobody could do it, it was like, okay,
yeah,
I can sit here for a minute, take an honest inventory of where I'm at, and know that I'm not getting left in the dust by all my peers, right?
Yeah.
And then I felt like a shift at some point where it was like, all right, well, then maybe how do I use this caution lap, so to speak, in my favor?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, the way that I saw it is like, well, when they open the gates back up, you better be the fastest. Like, you better not be outworked from that point. Like, God just gave you a reset button, time to go to work. And so that's what 2021 was for me. It was just like hustle as much as we possibly could.
And during that time, did you have, were you recording a bunch of different songs? Like, had you kind of gone through that process, or what did that look like?
During 21, we released a song every 6 to 8 weeks, period. And really didn't have anything going. Like, I mean, nobody had anything going, but especially somebody that didn't have kind of the foundation that a Luke Combs, or like, nobody was doing anything, but they have a thing where people are already looking at, if somebody's going to drop a song, they're aware of it. Right. For us, we're putting out songs that nobody's aware of. Right. So we were like, you know what? Let's just be very consistent. And so, every 6 to 8 weeks we would put out a new song, and then by the end of the year, we had the 21 record that we put out. Yeah. And then just a couple months later, we released Wild as Her, and it was like, everything that I was told not to do, we did. Yeah. And
like what?
Like, okay, like, don't put out music between Christmas and New Year's. Mm-hmm. Like, don't do that. That's a bad idea, because the charts are frozen, and I'm like, well, we're not on the charts. Doesn't really matter to us. And also, if you're telling me that nobody puts music out in between Christmas and New Year's, sounds like a great time for me to put music out.
Yeah, it's my time to shine.
Because maybe no one else is. So I did that, and now we started to do that every year, because our fan base has grown to like love that. They've loved to be able to expect a little Christmas gift, a little New Year's something to go into the next season, and done it the last 3 years, and it's worked out really well. But then on top of that, the kind of consensus advice was like, you just dropped the record in December, like late December, a couple days before New Year's. And then you're going to follow it up a couple months, like literally 60 days later, you're going to release the next song off of a new project that you're not even done with. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's it. And it was the one that busted everything wide open for us. So not that it's not like we were doing that for the sake of being rebellious. Right. But it was just like, how can we think about things a little bit differently than maybe the next guy? Yeah. And that served us really well so far. So a lot of times when I get advice, I'm like, what would it be like to do the exact opposite of this sage wisdom?
Is this a good idea, actually?
Yeah. I mean, I think
you're going against the grain, dude. I love it.
Well, and
I love it.
The main thing is like your fans. Like, if you can get a pulse on what they want. Yeah. A lot of times it's different than the like normal advice that you're given. Yeah. Because like a lot of times it doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't put your finger on why certain things work and why certain things don't. And nobody really can. So it's like, if you can somehow understand the desire of a fan base, I feel like that's a superpower. Yeah. Like I'm watching guys that I look up to that have that rapport with their fans. It's like they're doing things that they don't make sense at all. Yeah. I mean, watching 35 songs drop doesn't really make sense, but look at how it turned out, right?
That's working.
It's working. And it's because I think that they are in tune with their fans. Yeah. And I think everybody's fan base is a little bit different, right? Like, that's all the needs are going to be, or the desires will be a little different. So just trying to tune in to that was what we were doing.
Amazing. What did that feel like when Wild as Her started? I mean, it took off first on TikTok and stuff like that, and that translated to streaming. I remember when that was happening. And then what was that journey kind of like from that song coming out all the way to like, you know, it going number one? Like how long did it take? And like, I don't know, what are some of your favorite high watermarks along the way?
Yeah. Well, it took like a year and a few months from the time that it came out. Independent release. It was just the next song on the, 8-week release.
Yeah.
Came out of the gates, pretty normal release, like nothing crazy. And a couple months in, maybe like somewhere between a month and 2 months after the release, it was like really starting to pick up some steam. And when my manager called me, he was like, "You're having a moment." I was like, "What does that even mean?" And he was like, "Man, essentially, like, we didn't make a video on TikTok. Like I didn't even have TikTok on my phone. I had a TikTok, but I didn't really use it."
Yeah.
And he's like, essentially, the way that most videos explode or most songs explode is the artist will put a video to, use their own song and do a video, and that becomes a thing. And for us, it was like somebody else, I don't even know where the first video came from, but they used my song, that sound, to do whatever they were doing on their video. And then it just kind of spread like wildfire. It was like, that was the song to make a video to. And I don't even know if there was an actual trend. It was just kind of like, "Hey, I like this song. My next video that I'm going to do is going to be this song."
Yeah.
And it just kept going and it kept going and it kept going. And then, kind of the high points would be, it was a gold record before we had, done anything with a label.
Wow.
And that was like a crazy, I call it a pirate ship moment. Because we kind of jokingly have always said like, "Hey, our crew is the pirate ship going up against the cruise liners. Like, we don't have all the bells and whistles. We don't have the big crew, but we got a small crew, and with hard work, we think we can take over, and we have the ability to turn on a dime and put out a song every 6 weeks if we want to, and nobody telling us what to do." So the pirate ship moment was getting a gold record.
Amazing.
By just, a small team,
Yeah.
And so that was a big high point. But then, having the ability to, like, I remember one show at Hanks in McKinney, Texas.
Yeah. R.I.P. to Hanks, man.
I know, dude. It pains me, these cool venues that are going out. But I hear rumblings that Hanks might be back. I don't know if that's true, but they might be.
Gotcha.
They might be coming back.
Okay.
But we were playing the show at Hanks, and there were like 12 record labels that flew in to see this one show. Whoa. Literally all of them at the same show. So I was like, man, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if these people play nice with each other. Or it's like, we're just going to have them all come hang out and watch the show. And we played for 2 straight hours that night.
Yeah.
I just, the fans, they wanted every song we had. So we played them just about everything we did. And yeah, it's just kind of a...
do you remember like the first time you played Wild as Her when it was like they're screaming it back at you? Like
100%.
What show was that? And like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, dude, it was Mankato, Minnesota.
Okay.
Like we'd been playing, I say that we were still playing the Texas, Oklahoma clubs, and they were singing it. But the first time that stands out in my mind really was we were opening for Cody Johnson in Minnesota, in Mankato, Minnesota. And literally to this day, I couldn't point out on a map where Mankato is. So like we were unfamiliar with the area, and I knew they were unfamiliar with us. It's like everybody in the band and crew is from Oklahoma. Like it's just that, homegrown band, right?
Yeah.
And we go up there, and I remember talking to the boys before we went on stage and was like, "All right, guys, these guys are not going to care about anything we're about to do. Like, they don't know us. They definitely don't know the music, but we have to punch them in the mouth. We're the first of 3. Yeah. Cody is a badass live performer. And if we want to be remembered, we better leave an impression." Yeah. I just remember having that like, you know, it was a good, well-received pep talk, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
some of them don't always go over super well, but this one in particular, I remember like we were all like, let's go kick some ass. So we walked out there and we were giving them everything we had. And then we got to Wild as Her, and I played the first 4 notes in Mankato. 7,500 people in Mankato, Minnesota knew the first notes of that song. Dang. And I was like, I talked to the guys in the talkback, and I was like, I might have lied to y'all. I think they might already know this.
Yeah.
And so we started playing it, and by the end of the song, dude, the last chorus, it was the first time it kind of started this tradition. Like, I just, like, every night now, it's just, y'all got the last chorus, and it's like there's a couple key moments that always happen. And I just let them scream it. And I couldn't believe it, dude. I could not believe we were so far away from the scene that we had cut our teeth in. And that we thought we were like completely unknown. Yeah. And the songs were completely unknown, and they knew it word for word. Wow. And yeah, I'll never forget that moment. It was super cool.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills a little bit thinking about it. And then do you remember when it went number 1? Like, what were you doing that day? Did you do anything crazy to celebrate? Like, how did it, I don't know.
Okay. So this is May, June. I can't remember. It's May. And we were opening a show in Lubbock, Texas for Ashley McBride at Cook's Garage. I remember it. And then later went on to tour the UK with Ashley this year. It was awesome. But this was it's kind of like, it was a rainy night. It was an outdoor show, so it wasn't like a killer turnout.
Yeah.
Pretty like, I don't know, kind of a bummer night actually. Like,
yeah.
In terms of, you know, there were great ticket sales, but it was like really nasty weather, and you're outside in a dirt lot, and like, it just was kind of one of those things where you're just like, man, didn't feel like the golden day. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And we were told that, like, I got some phone calls. It was like, hey man, this isn't going to happen. Your song's sitting in that 5 spot. And this is the week it's like, it's now or never. Yeah. And I remember going, okay, well, why do you think that we're not going to have a chance at going number 1? And my team was like, well, you got a guy named Morgan Wallen sitting in the 2 spot with the most viral song of the year now, last night. Yeah. It's just not looking good. Like, you versus the juggernaut, right? And I just remember going like, there's no way this is how this ends. You know, there's no way, out of all the stuff that we've been through to get right here, there's no way this is the way that this story ends. And I'm a big believer in manifesting things. I have been for a long time. And if, like, my rule is, if it doesn't scare me, then I don't manifest it. But if it scares me, I need to. Yeah. And so back before we signed a record deal, I remember talking with Bo, my tour manager, and some of the band, and I was like, this song is gonna go number 1. We're gonna sign one of these record deals, and this song's gonna be a number 1 hit. And I just, like, in that moment kind of flashed back to that. I was like, and on the phone call, I was like, listen, I don't believe that this is the way that it all goes down. But let me tell you, I don't care where it ends up. I do care how we fight until that last moment. Like, I called the radio team, my radio team. I sent text to everybody that was involved, and it was essentially like, I don't care where it ends up on a chart. All I care about is that we walk away from this thing and we know that we fought like hell at every turn. And like, it came down to the wire, and we got the phone call, and I thought it was for sure like, hey, we fought really hard. Yeah. Great run. Good job, buddy. But it didn't get there. And got the phone call that said, hey, you got the number 1 song in the country. Man. You fought like hell. We fought like hell, and we got it. And dude, it was awesome, man. It was I'm more proud of how it went down than the fact that it went down. Yeah. Like, it just was such our DNA. It was such our story for it to unfold that way. And then we we still like we celebrated our first number one by, luckily Cook's Garage was nice enough to give us a bottle of champagne because we were told it wasn't going to happen. So it's not like we were sitting on deck with like stuff ready to party or nothing. And so they gave us a bottle of champagne. Somebody found one and we shook it up and broke it open. And I remember we have a red van called Rooster that we toured out of. And that was, we were still in a van, and I got on top of the van, and I have this picture of like me sitting on top of Rooster, just shaking this bottle of champagne and just howling at the moon, dude. It was like an adrenaline rush, and then got right back in and drove 8 hours through the night to get home. And next day was Mother's Day. So I was giving my wife a break with the kids and celebrating her. And, but it was a mountaintop moment, dude. It just felt like we won one for the underdogs, you know, that we took it all the way from an independent release to the number one song in the country, dude. And a platinum, like it, sometimes you can see there are hit songs or there are number ones that aren't hits. Yeah. Sometimes there are hits that aren't number ones, and then sometimes they overlap and you get both. And I feel like we were very fortunate for our first song that really put us on the map to be both. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people don't always understand like how hard it is to walk the wire all the way, especially when your starting point is like, you're not even on a label yet. You're not even like, there's no radio.
You're at a pavement company.
You're literally, at a pavement company. It's crazy, man. It's incredible.
I said, I wish I would have taken bets. You know, it's like, hey, put $1 right here. Yeah. Cause that guy whoever took that bet would have made some money. But no, it was cool, man. I look back, I'm very grateful. Like we have a great team, and
it's beautiful, man.
And it does take a lot of people, man. I didn't realize that either. It's like, first off, starts with like to burst onto the scene, you gotta have a great song. You have to. There's no other way to really do it. But then after that, it's a whole. I still don't even feel like I'm a major label artist. Like I don't know. I live in Texas. I don't know the ins and outs really. Like when I was here, I wasn't learning the artist game. I wasn't learning the radio game. I was just trying to be good to people and write songs. And that was really like the extent of my time here. So I still feel like I don't really know the game. Yeah. Like there's a whole world that of politics and stuff that I just don't understand.
Well, I think
there's a lot of people that are involved. I know that. Yeah. That work really hard.
A lot of great people. And I think you got something figured out. So maybe you're doing it right.
Shoot.
With, well, last thing before we get out of here is I always ask people if you could kind of go back to yourself when you were starting on this journey, like what's a piece of advice? It doesn't even have to be about the business. It could be about life, but what piece of advice would you give to somebody just kind of starting their journey?
Man, it's probably the same piece of advice that I need to hear myself, you know, like, and continually remind myself. But I think there is really something to be said for like remaining hopeful, remaining like having an unwavering hopefulness about you. Yeah. Like truly believing that I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't feel like I was supposed to be doing this. Like keeping your head down, keeping focused on your craft. It's so easy for me, dude, to compare what I have to what someone else has. It's so easy, and it's very hard to not do. Yeah. Like it's easy to do, but it's even harder to not do it. And that's the thing. It's just I would keep my head down and keep this like unwavering hopefulness, because those are the people that win. In my opinion, it's the people that kept going long enough. That like there's a threshold of talent, and I feel like once you're in there, if you keep at like the people that fail are the people that just get tired. Yeah, they give up. I've just seen enough of my friends that have been persistent that it's just like something great is going to happen if you're good to people, if you remain hopeful, and if you put out great art. Like I just believe it. I haven't seen it play out any other way. Yeah. You know, so
that's awesome, man.
So, yeah, and I'm literally preaching to myself in the moment, right? Just, dude, you got to stay hopeful that the best is yet to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, I often will find myself like listening back to things I've said on this podcast. I'm like, man, I need to take my own advice.
Dude, I've been thinking that the whole time we've been talking, dude. I'm just like, man, it's cool to reflect. Like, this is why people journal.
Yeah.
Because you learn from yourself. Like you get this opportunity to think in a way that you don't normally think in the other X amount of hours in the day. And yeah, it's like true reflection. But I've been sitting here the whole time we've been doing this podcast, and I'm like, man, I think I'm saying things that I need to like listen to, you know, and I haven't. I'm just answering your questions, and they're great questions, which maybe is a huge part of it. But yeah, I've been thinking that the whole time we've been talking, dude.
Well, dude, I'm super honored to have you on, and like, man, like whether you realize it or not, I hope you do, but I think that your story is so inspirational. It inspires me.
Thank you.
And I know it inspires a lot of people. And I think that your like relentlessness and grit is like, you know, look what it's doing for you, man. Like it's awesome.
Thank you, Troy.
I think it's a really cool thing, man. So
yeah,
thank you for being here,
bro.
And that's it. That's the pod. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of 10-Year Town. If you're still listening, you must have liked it. So we hope that you will leave us a rating or review on Apple or Spotify, or give us a subscription on YouTube. It's all free. Don't cost you nothing. But we appreciate you being here, and thank you for supporting the 10-Year Town community. See you next week.